This right here is the Chuwi Lapbook SE that I'm going to be unboxing and just do my initial first impressions and a couple of tests on. So this one and the TechTablets F5, which I should hopefully have next week, are highly anticipated budget laptop. So this at the moment, at the time of this video, has been selling for about $259 US. Now what's interesting about it, it has a full metal design, a fully laminated 1080p panel, 128GB SSD, it has a 37 watt hour battery, and it runs Windows 10 Home on this. Now the weakness of this particular laptop, exactly like the EasyBook X4 that I looked at, we're limited to only 4GB of RAM, and sadly you cannot expand upon that RAM. Now the keyboard, one of the key selling features of this, is edge to edge, so it has a little bit of, you could say, like a MacBook 12 look to it. Some people either like that or hate that, but it is a backlit keyboard. You get inside the box. So we've got the typical Chuwi packaging here, as you can see. The laptop, and you can see on the top, it does have a Chuwi logo here, and I think that the backlight from the IPS panel is actually going to shine through on this, and it will be illuminated. Here we have the warranty guarantee cards and whatnot, a quick start guide. So it is DC charging, 12 volts, 2 amps, that's pretty standard there, so no Type-C charging on this model, and the version I got here has the EU plug. The laptop weighs 1.43 kilos, so it's actually a bit heavier than I expected it to be. And the full carry weight with the charger and the plug brings it up to 1.62 kilos.
The thickness of the laptop isn't too bad. It's a 15.5. This is around the thickest point. That's without the rubber feet. When you add those rubber feet there, then that will come up now to about 17 millimeters.
So the top of it has a nice smooth alloy finish to it. It is that matte grey that we have seen on other products from them. So after a while it will actually end up showing fingerprints there. I'll see if I can open this up with one hand. I don't believe I can. Actually, no, you can open that up with one hand. And there we have that edge-to-edge keyboard. So yes, it does have a bit of an Apple, the 12-inch version look to it, doesn't it? The styling of that with the edge-to-edge keyboard. Now the touchpad is large. It should be using Windows precision drivers. And this palm rest here, to me that feels like it is plastic. Now even though this hinge can be opened up one-handed, it's relatively stiff and it feels like it's going to hold it. I'll see what happens if you pick it up and move it. It might wiggle around a little bit, but I've noticed too, because we've got the fully laminated glass on this, that there's no flex on this. Like you can't actually move that. If you try to forcefully move that, you probably end up cracking the display on this, and pressing down, there's a little bit of flex down on that. So our keyboard is backlit, and the power button, it seems to have the same level of resistance as all of the other buttons. So hopefully I'm not going to end up tapping that when I go for the delete key. I do like to see them move this at least away from the actual keyboard to separate them. Is a little bit better for accidental presses of that power button. But in the settings in Windows, you can actually set it to do nothing. So we've got control of the backlit keyboard right here with function F5. Here's our brightness controls. And we've also got print screen, which is good to see, and then of course your page up and down. Now these keys do feel quite good. They've got a little bit of a curve inwards to these keys, so giving it a little bit better of a feel. And I love the fact that they've gone with black keys and not silver. Silver, it's sometimes hard to read the actual text of those keys, as I found with the jumper EasyBook X4. There are 3 status LEDs up the top here you can see. So one for power, one for caps lock, one for the touchpad. So the touchpad can be disabled with function escape, and then that light will of course illuminate. You can see that when the screen is powered off, that you can hardly make out the bezels. You can just see the difference between it, at least here I can, but on camera a little bit harder to see there. So this is both a pro and a con. The glossy screen tends to make colors stand out a little bit better, but of course you're going to get the reflections everywhere having this glass on here. So I prefer personally to have a matte screen, but it does make it look a little bit more premium. Now you notice that the edges around here, what they've done is they've rounded them off a little bit, and that feels like a plastic insert around here. Overall, so far the build quality and the finish is really quite good considering its $259 price. Right up the top there is a 720p HD webcam.
So for ports on the right side here, we have a USB 3 port, 3.5mm headphone jack with mic support, and then a micro SD card slot. Then on the left we have HDMI 2.0A, we have DC in there for charging with the status LED, and another USB 3 port. On the back of it we do have a plastic strip here. Now this could be for the wireless antenna's reception, but those antennas are probably located around the screen. Then the bottom of the laptop you will find 4 rubber feet and the screws to hold in a metal housing. So in order to remove the case, you must remove the 2 rubber feet on the end and remove all of the screws. Don't forget this one here that is also under the sticker. And then you can easily pry off that back. So up the top, like some of the other models I have looked at, we have 4 speakers. Now these speakers will fire out from just above the keyboard, and it does have a 38 watt-hour battery here. Good move with Chuwi here, going with that larger size 2280 size SSD. These are not only faster, they are also cheaper when you're sourcing a replacement. The wireless antennas are routed up through into the screen, so I believe they're either on the back of the IPS panel, perhaps around the Chuwi logo, or they could be around the bezels. The wireless chip is an Intel 3165. This is very common, so it's dual band wireless, and they have glued those antennas in place. Under the heatsink, you will see our chipset there. They've just used a thermal pad. They haven't gone with thermal paste on this, so I'll find out later on if the thermals are going to be good. If not, you may have to go in here and repaste it, or put paste on it because it's lacking that, and then you can also put a thermal pad on top of this copper heatsink here. Now you'll see that where they have the chipset cut out here, it doesn't actually line up with where it is, the location. You can see that clearly when you put that over the top, and that isn't lining up there. Right here we have a 32GB Samsung eMMC. Below that is the BIOS chip, if you need to flash it. This is a WinBond chip, so you can connect a clip up to this if you somehow brick the BIOS. The RAM must be on the other side of the motherboard. So we do have rather large bezels on the top. The side bezels are a little bit slimmer than what you typically see on this kind of price range, but it's to be expected. Remember that this is $259 US. Our RAM speeds you can see there, well, it's 2133 megahertz, not the fastest supported, which is 2400. This BIOS, the good news is completely unlocked to us, and that means we do have access to things like the power limits. But for some reason, when you go along and disable it, the setting doesn't seem to take. Now, I've experienced this with the Jumper X4. You have to then use as well the software override method. So both combined then completely unlocks those power limits. But of course, watch the thermals that it doesn't get too hot. So Windows is just now setting up. I wanted to point out here with the clear blue screen, you can see we do have light leakage. It's exactly the same as the core book. So you notice at the top that it's a slightly lighter blue there around those edges. And this is something that these IPS panels typically have. It's due to the process of the optical bonding when they bond the glass on top of that IPS panel that this can often happen. So you can see setup languages, we've got quite a few here. We've got English, German, Spanish, French, Italian, Chinese, Russian, and Korean. Here's a look at that rear logo. So it's using a clear plastic, and you get the back of the IPS panel's backlight shining through with a very bright Chuwi. So some people are gonna like this, others not so much. Now taking a look at the display, so when you're displaying images like this with the black borders either side, you can't see the side bezels then, and the screen does actually look really good. So if I'm liking it better than the Jumper EasyBook X display, because that was a TN panel, so it had really poor viewing angles. So this screen, it doesn't actually recline back, that's it. Maximum angle, which is really not a lot. I'll just show you from the side, so you can see there. That really needs to be a little bit more, I feel, but so far, liking it. Now this screen tops out at 210 lux that I just measured, so it's not the brightest panel. However, because it is fully laminated, it does actually look pretty good, pretty bright for indoor use. Now outdoors, it's going to be a little bit harder to make out what is on the screen because really you need a matte screen for that in really bright lit environments. So right now I do have powerful studio lights on. Another good thing here too that I like is the screen brightness. So you can actually lower it down very low, and you'll see here that right now that is about 5 lux that I measured. Not even that too. Now you can see there's a little bit of flicker happening. Now this is pulse width modulation, controlling the brightness. This flicker is only on camera, okay? When I'm looking at this now, I can't see anything. It seems fine to me. So you can up that then again to right up to the 210 lux. So just show you quickly just a couple of other images here. That it is I think it's a nice looking screen considering the price. If you're wondering about the Windows license, well, Windows 10 Home, and yes, it is fully activated. The version of it is 1709, so not the latest. You will need to run Windows Update. As you can see, zoom right into the screen. So if you get close enough, you will kind of make out pixels, but at normal viewing distance, you're not going to see anything. So you probably spotted it. What are they doing, Chewy? Why have they done this? So they've installed Windows on that 32GB eMMC. And I think I know the reason why they have done this. So they have another model that's from the same manufacturer, the same ODM, and that's going to have just 32GB storage. And then there's spare, a blank SSD slot. So that is why this is happening. So when you get that other model, I think it's called the Alpha Wise, it's going to be sold by GearBest. You can just install the drive you want. But right here, we just got the SSD completely unused, and everyone knows that you should have the operating system running off the fastest drive. So you're going to have to use a tool like Macrium. There's the free version that you can clone that over, and then go back into the BIOS once you've cloned it, and set this to be the boot device. And this is a definite annoyance that you have to do this. Oh, and the micro SD card slot, it is running at a maximum of about 26 to 27 reads, so it's not a high-speed one. And I've been testing out my 1TB drive here, so I am getting full transfer speeds, USB 3 speeds, from both of the USB 3 ports. And of course, the keyboard is backlit as mentioned, so that's the first level, which isn't really that bright. It's good for, I guess, saving on the battery. And then this is the second setting, the highest, brightest setting. Overall, I feel it's quite good considering the price of this laptop. Now the touchpad, I'm happy to report that it is, as I mentioned before, a precision one, and the accuracy is good. Even the finest, slightest little movements seem to be fine. There's scrolling as well on it. Now the mouse buttons, clicky style, left and right. And overall, it seems a decent touchpad. I do like the size of it as well. Linux Mint, this is working well. Wireless is working. Screen brightness controls too. Those are working. Sound, everything's working, including the touchpad, the left and right mouse buttons. So no issues there. Really good. This is the latest Linux Mint build, by the way. On to audio now. Things are looking positive. I just tested out the 3.5mm headphone jack. Really good. There is no static whatsoever. It is clean. And a nice decent output of the volume 2 through that. I found that the Gemini Lake seems to have stepped things up a little bit in terms of sound. It was the old, the Apollo Lakes were better as well, quite good. But it was some of those cherry trails and things that always seem to have static over them. Not the case here. Now I test out the speakers, but first I just wanted to show you how you can boost the volume of them a little. That is to go into the Realtek settings and find this right here. So equalizer, set that to powerful, and that will boost up the volume about 4 to 5 decibels. Yeah, okay, as expected, not wonderful. The volume is okay after my little tweak, but there's just no bass to these little speakers whatsoever, so they don't sound that great. The treble's there's mids. The battery checks out at the 37 watt hours that they claim, even though on the back I read 38, but that is what everyone else is using. It is basically 10,000 milliamp hours. So we're getting estimated battery life of about 7 to 8 hours. Now, my experience with this chipset already, the battery capacity, I think more around, say, 6 to 7 hours of battery life you can expect to get out of these. Now, if you were to use it on that really low, super low, lowest absolute setting of brightness, then I think, yeah, maybe you might be able to squeeze that out to 10 hours. But you can hardly see the screen, though, in normal conditions. Performance of the laptop, the Lapbook SE here is as expected. So the single core score here in Geekbench 4, that's good. Multi-core score, that's a little low. I suspect some minor throttling is actually happening. We're not really throttling, but it's clocking down. So I've just been looking at the temperatures now for the last 20 minutes or so. Well, actually, no, that's been running for 30 minutes, and I've got maximum temps of 85 degrees. When it's idle right now, that lowers down quite quickly to about 39, 40 degrees. And my average temperature has been 63. I've been running Windows updates and stress testing and things like that just to get it quite warm. Now, I do expect this to actually exceed 85 with gaming and tests like that, so it's a definite candidate, I feel, for my copper heatsink mod. They should have put a thermal pad on the back, I believe, between the copper heatsink and the rear casing. That would probably lower temperatures a good 5 to 10 degrees. Now, the RAM is running in dual channel, according to the information. HW info also says dual channel. And 4 gigabytes of RAM, is that going to be enough for you? Well, for a lot of people, I feel it actually is, surprisingly, because I've been using the Jumper EasyBook X4 for quite some time, and with 4 gigabytes light use, it's actually fine. It's not too much of an issue. If you open up like 20 tabs in Chrome, then yes, you will run into swapping. You will run into a little bit of slowdown. But I feel it would really be the sweet spot if we had 8 gigabytes with this model. Chuwi, they need to push out an 8 gigabyte model of this particular laptop.
So this is the Chuwi Lapbook SE, and so far there are a lot of positives to this machine. The build quality is good, the internal build quality as well. When you look at everything, it has that metal internal frame that's supporting the keyboard to stop any flex there. Everything's screwed into place quite well. We have a large battery that's going to be good for, I feel, up to about 7 hours of use there. Wireless AC, the aerial is going up on here. The screen's quite nice. Now, it's not the brightest screen, but overall, very nice to look at indoors. It's going to be perfectly fine at its 210 lux. And I do love the fact that we've got a backlit keyboard and we've got a good combination of a very low screen brightness. So it's going to be perfect for using this, for example, on an airplane, you're on a long haul flight, and they've got all the shutters down, the lights are off and things. You can put on the lowest brightness, be watching a movie using the keyboard typing or something like that, and it's not going to hurt your eyes, and the battery then should probably last for maybe even 8 hours on that super low setting there. Now, one thing with the heatsink, a little bit funny there, that they put like a compression little pad on there to keep pressure on the heatsink, and so far temperatures are up to 85. I think that Chuwi should have put a thermal pad on there. I believe I might have to do my copper heatsink mod on this just to improve the thermals and get better performance overall. Now, another thing is they've got the large SSD with very good speeds on here, but they did that really silly move of installing Windows 10 to the eMMC drive. Now, for some people that aren't techies, they're not really up to speed with everything like this, perhaps say your grandmother or your mother or your father, they might have a bit of a problem then moving that over and cloning that over to the SSD, which is what really needs to be done. Hopefully Chuwi is going to change that in the future. And of course the 4 gigabytes of RAM. They need to up that to 8, I believe. If they release a version of this with 8 gigabytes of RAM and they improve on the heatsink, they put a thermal pad there. Hopefully Chuwi, are you listening? 8 gigabytes of RAM, that right there, install Windows on the SSD. They, I feel, have one of the best then budget laptops, especially for the price. Now, obviously, if they put the 8 gigabytes of RAM on there, that will increase the price probably up to just under 300 US, but it would be worth it to see that. So far, really liking it. Other positives, keyboard's very nice to type on. I do like it. The spacing of it is good. It's backlit, as I mentioned. Touchpad also works out well, and that is good. It's large Windows Precision drivers there. HDMI 2 spec, so I'm running my TV. I can run my monitor at home then as well at the full 60 Hertz. So it's not all laggy and choppy. That is great. So really, as a package, there's a lot of things that are good on this, that are going for it. And really, I must say that this is definitely in the top 3. This has surpassed the Jumper EasyBook X4. Definitely better than that one. It's now between this model, I feel, and then the TechClass F5. That F5 model I should have next week, and do look out for a video of that. My latest videos are also right up here, and do check out my video of the Jumper EasyBook X4 if you're interested in a cheaper version of the Gemini Lake budget laptops. Thank you so much for watching this video. Bye for now.